What if technology could not just entertain us, but heal us? What if virtual reality wasn't just about game, but about giving stroke patients the chance to move again or helping someone rebuild their confidence one motion at a time? Today's guest is doing exactly that. Meet Daish Malani, founder of AdLife, a company at the intersection of medicine and technology, building VR applications to improve physical ability and mental cognition for stroke survivors and patients with upper body mobility challenges. His work combines science, compassion, and innovation, transforming rehabilitation into something more engaging, more effective, and more human. And yes, he's also a music producer and arranger. From his early inspirations to profound stories of impact, we will uncover how Daesh is reshaping the future of healthcare one virtual step at a time. Welcome, Daesh. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. I'm excited to be on your vidcast, I guess you call it these days.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm really excited to have you. I've been following you for almost 8, 9 years now, right from the day when you started with uh, the initial virtual reality app that you had to the point where we are today. You have really come a long way. I would like to start with the first question, which is starting from your journey, your childhood, and how you progress to where you are.
Sure. There's lots of time in that period, but ultimately I knew the areas that I wanted to work in my whole life. I was interested in art and design, and I wasn't that talented at music at that point, I'm afraid, but I had interest in it. And I progressed through school doing art and design, and then I studied animation. I didn't get into game design until much later, but ultimately I ended up moving to Japan for a period of time. I taught junior high school and preschool, and I really wanted to use the kind of technologies that I had used to accelerate education, but I couldn't do it in a country where I didn't understand the complexities of language around cognitive function and physical function. And so I ended up moving to Canada, working in games for a while, and that's where I got introduced to virtual reality. And my life changed from that point onwards, and I've never wanted to work in another industry ever since. I guess the only caveat to that is that I wanted to work in virtual reality, but you don't just work in virtual reality for the sake of working in virtual reality. I wanted it to have purpose, and I wanted to complete some other missions in my life, is using the tools that I had available to me to create something that changes people's lives. And I could clearly see virtual reality doing that. It's taken a long time, as you said. I think you said it something like 9 years ago, which is probably true if you've seen one of my prototypes.
Yes.
And we've gone from a $20,000 computer to a $500 portable computer with about 20 times the power. So yeah, it's a long journey, but ultimately I get to work in all of those areas that you've talked about, like doing music, and I also get to do animation. I get to do interaction. All of these things are woven into virtual reality, but also with the lens of how does it create better quality of life for people.
Amazing. So, look, it is a very different concept, and traditionally people think about virtual reality for gaming or another experience altogether. But you chose to stick to healthcare. What happened in your life? What ignited you to take that path?
Well, I guess I was pretty oblivious to stroke and other kind of ailments of aging when I was younger, but it became very real to me. And then, so my uncle had a very serious stroke, and he was probably one of the most lively people in our family. He was the caretaker of his building in Mumbai, and his whole life was walking around and talking to people. And he lost the two things that he cared about the most, which was walking and talking. And he didn't die immediately, but you can almost say that he died of depression a few years later because he had none of those interactions that make life a positive experience, or he had relied so much on the happiness of others to get his happiness. And then I started looking around, and we had a few other friends that had strokes, and I just saw how radically it changed their lives. And there's nothing you can do to stop this. They can say if you quit smoking and eat healthier and things like that, but stroke comes out of nowhere. And I felt it was just unfair that you could do all the right things in life and still have to deal with something of that complexity. And I knew that the tools that we were experimenting with had the ability to change people's minds in how to engage in an activity. And then it became obvious that we were training people how to use their body and mind properly. And this could either go into the education sector, but ultimately rehabilitation is just educating yourself about how your body works again. So that's the path we went down, and I'm still going down that path now.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the initial app where you had to move the balls from A to B, and that was not easy. That took a little bit of effort, and I could tell that that led to not just the gaming experience, but also the fact that you wanted to achieve some goals, and in turn, it was benefiting, obviously, the users. Help us understand in a layman's language how the virtual reality is helping stroke patients or the people with mobility challenges.
Yeah. So actually, I guess one thing I should explain is we've actually broadened our scope significantly recently um, to look at the intangibles. Like we can capture body movement significantly, and which is one tangible part of someone's movement. It's like quantitative analysis. But qualitative analysis going, how does the body move? Does the person enjoy these activities? What motivates them? These are a bit more complex. And we started to move into those areas because actually at the end of the day, we have to make people happy before they become healthy. And so people need to know why they're doing exercise. They have to have a clear goal in sight and actually be motivated to do it. And also one of the methodologies of recording what they do means that what they have done, they get kudos for technically, because if you do exercise at home, no one knows whether you do it or not. And famously about, I don't know what the percentage is, they said something like 40%, I think, lie on their logbooks for exercise when they go home. They get to the end of a period and they realize that they haven't done their exercise and they don't want to look foolish. And actually, it's a double whammy because they do less exercise, but they pretend like they have because they don't want to look foolish in front of the doctor. But in our situation, when you do exercise, we count how many minutes you do and what you do, and then you get a reason to do it, and you know it's being analyzed later. I think I've kind of deviated from your original question. Can you just give me a recap? Sorry, I got lost in a little hole of information there.
So yeah, I was just trying to understand how these games, the virtual realities, helping your users. What
Yeah,
happens
so
when
on the
they start
mechanical
using?
side, we can
Yeah.
actually measure how far you can reach. We have a thing called volumetric measurement, which you can't do in any other tool except virtual reality. Is we create an area of interaction from your left hand and your right hand, and we look at how big the bubble is between the two interaction points. And from that, we can actually deduce what's someone's dominant side, whether they've been affected by hemiplegia, and all these things that if you're going to meet a person for the first time, you would know exactly what kinds of activities they could do. One of the most obvious things we tell people is if you met someone for the first time, you would know exactly where to put their cup of tea and which direction to point the handle. And so you would already know how their body works to a certain point, which expedites medical practitioners working with them. But it's actually just a more subtle thing that makes life easier without having to go through a massive diagnostic cycle. So once we have a map of how far someone can reach, some things like how far you could reach above your head, because can you get something out of a cupboard? Can you clean the floor? And like, this is your range of motion is for how high can you reach and how low can you reach without losing balance. And really, it's making a decision whether someone can live independently. The markers for independence are getting out of bed, brush your teeth, make a cup of tea, go to the toilet. If you can complete those 4 markers, then you can live independently at least for 30-40% of your day, which cuts down your cost and also regains independence. On the cognitive level, we give puzzles and things like that, and then we can deduce whether someone can understand rules. So when you make a activity, can they look at what's happening in front of them, deduce what's happening, and then follow along without any major instruction? And this would be because maybe there's some things you do in your life every day that are inherent in your life and they're so ingrained in you that you don't need to learn them. But if something new presents to someone, are they going to be in deep trouble? So it's looking at the safety of the person in the physical realm and looking at the safety of the person in the cognitive realm to make sure that they don't do something that might put themselves at harm.
Amazing. Help us understand what exactly happens after the stroke. Does it impact any specific activity or?
Well, the stroke doesn't actually mean, like, stroke means it's either a constriction of a blood vessel in your brain or an explosion. So there's 4 different kinds of stroke, and 3 of them are based on constriction, lack of oxygen. it actually kills off a random part of your brain. So every single stroke is individual.
Mhm.
Everyone is affected differently, and people recover at different rates. I'm happy to say that in Australia, at least, people are recovering at a much higher rate than before. Strokes have definitely not gone down. They've
Mhm.
gone up, actually, and they've gone up everywhere. But the rate of recovery and the speed of actually fixing these problems, like ambulances have stroke units now because they have to put blood thinners in to get oxygen to the brain as soon as possible. And so all of these things means that every single person that you approach post-stroke is affected differently, and you don't know what stage of a recovery cycle they're at. So you have to look at them like a blank canvas and then try and gather as much information as you can as quickly as possible to then make decisions about what this person's life is going to be in the short, medium, and long term.
Wow, that's amazing. And is it something where they install it at their home and practice, or there are centers for that? How does it work?
Ultimately, we see this eventually becoming home use, but we're working on the technology and working alongside clinical partners. So we don't deliver this service. We need still clinical partners, aged care partners to deliver the service and actually still check in on these people. What we're promising those people is that they get more granular level of monitoring, because actually every day they do an exercise, they get an opportunity for someone on the other end to view that and actually make a decision if they see them going into a decline cycle. For the aged care provider, clinical care provider, we can kind of red light, yellow light, green light people to say this person will need help very soon or need it now. This person will need it in the next few months, and this person is probably fine until they change categories. So ultimately, this will become a home use tool, but it'll start off in clinics because we want people to feel comfortable using it alongside other people and also watching people using it as much as doing it. You do obviously need to understand how the system works and a few things. Generally, primary carers and like spouses and parents and those kind of things can help the person put the system on. It's not complicated in any way. That's a very big part of what we do, is making it simple to use, but at the same time still would only recommend this through like a regular care program.
And I'm really keen to know some stories of how people have benefited. Some stories that come to your mind and you're so happy about what you have developed.
Sure. Like, I guess there's a famous story of ours working with a guy called Sam, and Sam has put a lot of effort in, so I'm definitely not taking all the credit. But Sam had 4 brain hemorrhages when he was, I think, 20.
Mhm.
The government of Australia actually deems someone past a point of rehabilitation if they have been brain damaged, and they refuse to rehabilitate them. What you do is you get a age pension and you put that towards putting them in a home or similar. Pam is Sam's mother, and so Pam wasn't going to have this. She didn't want her son going into an aged care facility. And so even though the government wouldn't support them, they modified their house. And then she started reaching out to alternative therapies and heard about us. I've actually been spending the last 7 or 8 years with Sam. Sam is cognitively all there. He's just lost the power of speech, and he can walk about 5-6 meters now. And the first time I went to visit Sam, and I've got to say, anyone that works in these industries, you go through this kind of shock phase because you think you understand what life is like for one of these people until you're right there in front of it. It can be pretty devastating to just understand where someone's at. I met Sam. He couldn't really move at all. And this was 2 years after his original brain hemorrhage. They tried a few simple things, and I basically put his hands on top of mine and I did the activities. And at that time, I was using the ball activity with him because it's an endless activity that automatically adjusts to an individual's ability. And I just had a moving his hands on top of mine and puppeting. Because our system uses the camera to recognize hand movement, as long as I hide my hands, it thinks it's his body doing it. So he's seeing his body doing it in virtual and real space. And he picked it up. And so he actually started using it and he got quite into it. He's actually got a very, very strong left arm now. And he does things like boxing and that kind of stuff. I actually went to visit him probably a month ago. Like, he's still part of my life. And I made a boxing game specifically for him, and he is hitting hard. So for a
Wow.
person that couldn't move at all, and that kind of weight distribution across your body also strengthens legs and core muscles, so that helps him be able to stand and walk. So being able to like move your body at that velocity. And there are certain aspects of Sam that may never fully recover. Like he still has limited movement with his right hand, but we develop different games to accelerate that kind of movement. But yeah, like it's exciting to see that. And these things don't happen overnight, but if you put effort in, you can definitely recover from literally anything.
Wow. And do you think that using your tools, can I safely assume that the impact is going to be different on every individual because of their condition? Or can,
Ultimately, we start from the point of view that any exercise will help, right? You do exercise. All we have to do is keep people motivated and understand why they're doing the exercise. The exercises themselves are just like obviously we tailor them to different people's needs, but people can try anything. Being part of a regime where you are putting effort into yourself and wanting to move forward is literally enough. Like the way your brain and body works, your brain will give your body the green light to recover. Like actually, your psychology has to be aligned for your body to recover. Sadness is one of the biggest killers, and so happiness is the healer. And so when you move, you get simple dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin releases, which actually then give you pain relief, which allow you to move more. And move more means interact more, and interact means think more. And so it's a very simple philosophy of just starting with anything and getting into a regime of wanting to do 15, 20 minutes a day or more if you've got that motivation.
wow. Do you think that age is any bar for stroke? What is the age group you have dealt with in your journey?
Well, you can have a stroke as early as 4, but that's not that common. It's obviously more devastating for a younger person, and they're more dedicated to recover. Some people actually just go at a certain point, well, this is me now. I expected to be age one day, and this is what I am. And so it's a very different philosophy. And then a lot of it is mitigating risk at the other end and just making sure that those people won't injure themselves. So it's more like just motivating people to do different activities. So I guess in the 60 plus range, which is probably the area that we're focusing on more than anything else, because we want to cater for regular decline. It's just as devastating to lose your function without stroke, for example. Like dementia is more confusing than stroke. At least when you have a stroke, once you've come to terms with it, you know what's happened to you. Dementia is so intangible that the individual doesn't really even understand what's happening to them, or they're in denial that it's happening to them. And so aging, which is there is a level of dementia that comes with all aging. We just call it forgetfulness if it doesn't affect you too radically. And then we know that people will lose physical ability also, and then balance and coordination. And famously, falls. They say falls will get you. Once you have a fall and you break a hip or something, they say you've got a ticking clock, and you've got about 5 years on average to live after a major fall. That's the kind of international standard. But we want to make sure that people don't fall, where they keep that coordination and balance. And so it's not just radical things like deep Alzheimer's or a stroke. Everyone needs help at a certain point. And it means that we can also give more dedicated help to the people that do need it if we can keep the people that are independent more independent.
Okay. Desh, another question I had was, you mentioned some time back the stroke is going up. Why do you think this rate is going up alarmingly across the globe?
So it used to be 1 in 6 in the world, according to the World Health Organization. Now it's 1 in 4, which is pretty wild when you think about it, right? You walk into a room and 2 of you are going to have a stroke. Mainly it's because life expectancy has gone up so significantly. So actually, the idea that people will have a stroke isn't as devastating as when they're going to have it. We assume that people will it's very common. So 25% of us will have a stroke at some point. It just depends how we deal with it and how our bodies are prepared to deal with that kind of thing. Like keeping active mentally and physically means if you did have a stroke, your neural reorganization is when your part of your brain dies, your brain, like a computer that's losing one of its hard drives, copies data from the dying hard drive to the other ones. And you might lose some other functions. Like they say famously, if you have a stroke, and you used to be able to play the piano, you might still be able to talk, but you can't play the piano. And what it would have done is actually moved language into the part that could play the piano. So it's really like you've taken one hard drive out of the computer, but you've saved the most important data. I've never met a person post-stroke that can't pump blood around their body or blink their eyes and moisten their eyes, because those things would kill you. Like, imagine if you couldn't blink your eyes or your eyes stayed moistened. So there's a core functionality to a human that is in there. Obviously, breathing is part of that too. And we know that that's almost impossible to stop your body doing, but it'll get rid of everything else to save those. This is actually probably why language and other things go, because your body doesn't deem it to be as important as those other things. And it depends what you've done in your life, whether your body has the ability to neuro reorganize at that pace. So the more active you are and the more mentally active you are, your brain is used to shuffling data. So actually, when you're talking about having a stroke, everything up until that point is the reason why you're going to have one life or the other. And possibly, like, if I have to reverse engineer this to my uncle lived a life just around his local area, and he knew the same 30 people, and he went and chat to them. He did come to Australia a few times, which was fun. He's a very funny guy, but he loved just staying around home. And I never really thought about it until now, to tell you the truth, but it might be one of the reasons why stroke affected him so radically, is you have to always be going outside of your comfort zone. That being said, you can't plan for all of these things, and so you just have to work with what you've got and try to get people using their brains as quickly as possible afterwards. And that all comes down to just knowing where the person is at and feeling confident that they can do a certain activity.
Coming back to you as a founder of AdLife, I would like to know what was the hardest part of building the company.
Everything. I know that in startup world, or in the world these days, people, they talk about startup a lot, and as ultimate freedom, and in a way it certainly is, but you have to learn so much, and it's definitely not just the area that you work in. Like, I've had to learn a lot about medical knowledge. I've had to learn about stroke, and even work about the lives of clinicians, and what their time constraints are. But then I have to learn about accounting, and I have to learn about insurance, and I have to learn about legal matters and intellectual property and all these things. And so, which is fine. Actually, like, it's a journey that is irreplaceable for me, but I would definitely tell people can be a hard slog. If you're in the medical realm in particular, getting credibility for a new tool is so hard. And people that have been in industry for 30, 40 years don't want some young whippersnapper telling them what to do and that they can do it better. So it's actually coming in humbly and going, we know that you guys have run this industry for a period of time, and we're just here to support, really. Like, I can't do it without you. And we're just trying to make sure that these technologies that we have developed have real purpose in society. We're not just going out there shooting zombies and things in games. Like, games are good because they de-stress people and they do certain things, but each technology has the ability to change lives in a much greater way. The gamification of education for the younger generation means that they'll be so much more excited to learn, and they'll retain much more information. And so, yeah, I guess really, yeah, if I got another job now, this is how I think about it. I guess if I got another job, I could literally walk in and take over any job in the room. And that's probably one of the most interesting parts of being a startup founder.
I agree. And you touched upon it, right? The initial reaction, the initial skepticism from the medical fraternity, that would have been disappointing.
Yeah, I went to Digital Health Melbourne a few months ago, and it's funny because in startup, to be a unicorn and all this kind of terminology, you're supposed to make $1 billion in a year. But actually, it's very hard to make $1 billion a year sustainably. Like, companies that do that rarely survive the long haul, and they end up disrupting an industry, but then leaving it without the support it originally had. So I didn't really want that. I'm happy with a slow and steady pace kind of thing, which does drive some people bonkers, but it's actually worked in our favor. But at this Digital Health Melbourne, I was chatting to a few people that, that they're obviously doing well in using new technologies in health space. And they're like, oh, you haven't cracked the decade? You're nothing. You're like in the medical space. If you haven't done 10 years, you can't even be included here, I'm afraid. So they're like, if you haven't been told your idea is terrible for 5 years, you're not one of us. And that was the thing they said. If you get to 20 years and no one's like really taking it on board, then you should probably give up. And actually, it just gave me a different scope, because I guess I don't want to be considered a virtual reality company, and I don't want to be just considered a startup, because that's cool. We're a healthcare company. We have to have health outcomes. So those other two classifications are just incidental as far as I'm concerned. I often, if I go traveling or I go to programs around the world, I'll get introduced. This is a VR guy. And then they'll introduce me to other tech people, because they're like, these guys make robots. These people are doing this other thing, AI. And I'm like, I do want to meet them because I'm a tech nerd. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm supposed to be meeting the health people because I'm a health person. And it's taken me a while to re-educate the startup side of the community that we are a healthcare company. It's taken um, me, I guess, the same time to convince the medical people that we're a healthcare company because they sometimes can't see past the technology either.
I agree. Look, talking about founder, right? Founders have to face significant failures unless you are really lucky to make an impact. How did I would like to know a little bit about those failures, how you dealt with it, and how they have changed you as a person.
Yeah, I kind of think about young me and before I went overseas, and I went overseas never learning Japanese. And then I started teaching at a school and I was teaching like over 1,000 students. And I was just like, I had like 2 days of training. And I think of young me that would have just kind of fallen apart when adversity happened or some confusion happened. But after being thrust into so many weird situations, that led my founder journey of being able to go, oh, this is fine. You know, that dog that's sitting in a room and the room's on fire. There's a meme that he's drinking a cup of coffee going, this is fine. And really just going, whatever's happening around me right now, I can solve this problem. And so people get annoyed with me and, you know, everyone that I've kind of worked alongside also a persona to fill. And so with advisors and other people kind of supporting you, they have a persona that they want to go. And if things aren't moving at the pace that they want, you've also got to understand that, you know, they're trying to fulfill a different goal, but alongside your goal. And you just have to be understanding of other people's needs. And then, yeah, when you're going into a new industry, you've got to understand that those people feel like you're trying to steal their job. And you have to explain to them that we're here to help. And so, yeah, really, all of the bad things, we had some quite bad things. Like, I didn't understand accounting at all. And it turns out I was working with someone at the time and who wasn't being completely upfront about what the accounting was like. And I almost got in a lot of trouble. And I only realized after that I had to be part of everything from then on. Like, I have to understand how this part of the business works, and I have to understand how this part of the business works. So I've done enough now in the sense of, like, I worked on the pitch for a while, I worked on the accounting for a while, and yeah, like, I've done enough to kind of get my head around it, and I spend a lot more time face to face. I wasn't the CEO of the company at that time, but I am now. And it's probably, I'm a CTO running a company. And so I think a lot of people understand that. And so at one point, I'll bring on someone to actually run the company, and we'll probably put people in each country because we want to expand in each place. That gives me a certain flexibility. And it's just those mistakes have guided how I'm going to set up the next phase of the company. So actually going, okay, I need to have someone that knows the A, B, and C, and I have to have clear and concise conversations with them. I have to actually make sure that they're empowered to make the right decisions and not try and just say the right thing and we'll get into eventual trouble. And so that's where those pitfalls have just really made me understand each relationship and make sure that person feels valued and they're going to do the right thing in the long run.
Makes sense. Coming to technology, from the point you started, now there's AI. How is it helping you in terms of expediting, and is it helping you move things faster? Are you using a lot of AI? Can you touch upon a little bit of technology side as well?
Sure. We do use a fair bit of AI. And actually, we use a lot more than a lot of companies, even ones that I know that basically advertise themselves as AI companies. We use it more incidentally, I would say. And as much as I've been trying to empower other people, I've been trying to empower myself too. And so, like, I've taken over a significant amount of our coding, particularly in the areas of mobility assessment, mainly because I've spent way more time with the people post-stroke and people with disability than the other programmers that I work with. And so it's actually the feel of it and how the data is collected is super important. So actually AI really helps me. I do spend a lot of time doing it, and eventually I'll have to transition out of that phase. But prototyping, we were working with a group yesterday and we were hypothesizing about how we could make a activity for Parkinson's disease where when they walk through a door, their brain can freeze. And I actually mocked up a simulation of it very quickly and then, put the code in. Couldn't have done that without AI. Some of our stuff I've kind of said, even before I really knew what AI was, I was saying this is going to be AI. We have Addie, she's an assistant, and she was actually acted out by me. I had a motion capture rig and I used to act her out and I would do her voice, and then we would go to Amazon and simulate the same voice with the same words. And so I kind of now she is AI driven significantly. She doesn't have like a neural network yet, but she will. It means that when someone is talking to her or interacting with her, they could actually use natural voice. And rather than it being a medical diagnosis, it would be, hey, Abby, good job playing basketball yesterday. Your right shoulder's getting much better. How about we play this today? It's such a more natural way of doing it, and we could actually learn people's personalities and what triggers them to do more activity. So that's where I see AI going for us. We've got a new app that you can actually just take a short video of someone and capture their skeletal structure. So because of the VR, we capture fine motor skills very closely. With our new app, you can capture the whole body movement, balance, and a few other things. That's all AI driven as well. And really, it's just helping clinicians understand that part of the body as well, because balance is a big part of general safety with living independently. And then it's just taking our data sets and allowing them to be rearranged for certain groups. And that's when you have basically like a data pool that's unstructured, and actually allowing people to make their own dashboard based on the information that's important to them. That's kind of just rearranging numbers, but with AI, will allow it to be changeable just with voice prompts and things like that, to go, give me this data set, I want to know with this person, or compare this to this other person, or something like that. Something that would take ages to actually make, as if you're even dragging a redesignable dashboard. If you just want to know this really random piece of information, that's where AI really kicks in, and you just go, I want to know if this person has reached above 74 degrees how many times in the last 6 months. And that would take a pain to code, but AI will tell you. So that's where I see a lot of that stuff going. So yeah, like every single part of this will be AI, and really for the user, it's someone to talk to that understands them and everything about them. I guess there's another tool we're working on too that's also AI, which is more like you just scan the room and it will tell you what's happening in the room and how you can interact with it, but based on your ability. And so possibly when we have the more AR type goggles, our same data set could travel with someone. They can go shopping. It can help them navigate the shop that they know. It can help them reach above their shoulder to get something off a shelf, that kind of stuff. I think that's enough about AI.
How far are you from creating the goggles which you can wear like normal glasses?
We don't make any of that stuff. We use MetaQuest. I've just been introduced to a company in India that is pushing out a device as good as MetaQuest, which I thought was going to be unbelievable. Obviously, Apple Vision Pro is probably a better experience in some ways, but 10 times the price, and it's lacking in some of the fine motor skills and things that we really want. They've caught up significantly, and I think they probably can, but it's not feasible. We need quality at a low cost, of course, is one of those things in life that you have to sacrifice in one area. And ultimately, if the price comes down, the organizations that deal with home care and clinical care will be much more willing to experiment. But the problem that I've seen is that everyone wants you to put the $20 version glasses on someone's head and say they'll be fine. And I'm like, they're going to hate it and they're never going to do it again because they're going to have such a bad experience.
Agree. And are you seeing more and more companies coming into this space?
Not really. China definitely has some, and some that we've never heard of. In the world, there's only really HTC Vive, Pico, MetaQuest. They're probably the only three major players. There are some like things like Vario and a few other ones, but they cost $20,000. And then the one in the intermediate would be Apple Vision Pro. I expect they will drop 50% in cost over the next maybe even 2 years. They'll have, call it Apple Vision Air almost certainly. And so then we kind of think once there's about a 3 times price disparity between them, that people will be willing to kind of move their way up. Yeah, the only thing is it all depends on whether the systems are compatible, because actually the amount of time it takes to build within one ecosystem. Meta has moved to OpenXR, which is an open source platform. HTC Vive has always worked on OpenXR. And Pico doesn't actually have hand tracking, so it doesn't really matter as much, but they still have an OpenXR way to interface with it. Apple allows OpenXR, but it also has their own proprietary stuff, as they usually like to do, which just means there will be a way to display content on multiple devices in the not too distant future. I'm not tied to the device we use now, but it just happens to be the quality we need at the price we need. And it's also the weight distribution on your head, how it feels, that kind of stuff.
So I'm just trying to understand if, let's say, if I have to use your apps, or let's say I'm a clinic wanting to use your app, what is the initial setup that clinic would need and the investment?
Sure. So we're looking at high volume clinics in general. So we're kind of siding more with aged care now because they have the ability to work across all of the sectors in rehabilitation, disability, and cognitive function, physical function. And so they generally have groups that come in and out of different sections because not one ailment, you're not just one person with one ailment, you often have a group. And so we're trying to make it as affordable as possible. And so our pricing structure at this phase is $300 per person per year, but we need to sell them at volume. And so we would be looking for about a minimum of 100 licenses. The hardware cost is minimal. They're only $500 each. And if you're actually sharing them across a group, you probably need 3 or 4. It depends how many people are coming in simultaneously to do it, because you can just share them across. They can be cleaned easily. There's devices you can put them in that sterilize them with ultraviolet light and that kind of stuff. You put them in a little box and you just set the timer for however long you want to do a deep clean or a micro clean. And so technically, if you have a clinic that wants to have 100 people, it's about 35,000 Australian dollars to set up. But for home use, we're trying to even it out. It'll be probably about $1,500 for an individual. And so we're going to have to adjust this for different areas of the world because like home care and things priced differently, which we're fine with because it usually scales with population. And so the higher the population, the larger the use case. We're pretty much bringing it in at almost cost price now. So at some point we're going to have to readjust, but at the same time we think that we can weather the storm just by having larger groups of people using it. So yeah, really it's a little bit complicated because we have NDIS in Australia and you're in UK, you have NHS. In some other parts of the world, you have different systems. And it's been up to the individual to kind of fight for their rights to get these programs paid for. One of the reasons why we're siding with aged care at the moment is they go into bat for you. And so you're much more likely to get funded through a known organization that's using a tool with other people. So we've seen too many people want to use new technologies like ours and fail. And we can say at the moment, you've probably got a 60-40 chance of getting it. And it's only because when they give out a tool, they want to know who's going to be looking after the person still. And they want to know where the data's going, and they need to tie it back to an organization. Actually, spouse and family member can monitor someone, and that's kind of where I've assumed this is going, but that's kind of taking the back seat for the moment because we need to know that those people can hand off to a known organization that can look after a loved one, family member, when the time is right, that is also agreed to be part of the same system.
And are you only focusing on Australia, or you are present or expanding in other markets as well?
I've been to quite a few places and just to kind of spend time in their clinics, and I've been to rehab clinics in about 8 different countries. Been to rehab clinics in 8 cities in India over the last couple of years. I've been Singapore, and Vietnam, Japan. Everyone has a slightly different problem, but they're based on the same problem. And that's where our system can be more malleable than a lot of others. So you're saying about the onboarding process before, we would have to actually ask them, okay, is this going to be mainly aged care focus? Is this going to be cognitive focus? Is it going to be physical focus? We can actually put a filter over the activities over the whole organization to say this organization only does this. Or we can actually say the clinician can then add a secondary filter for a group of people. And we can either do it by cohort of people or by geographical location, like a particular facility. So actually assign a persona to that as such, where we have all these different parameters we change. And then we can actually assign this profile to an individual. So for the home use, you would be getting an individual profile based on your needs, and it would actually automatically remove the activities that aren't suitable for you and give you more of the ones that are. And then we could actually help the clinicians decide which activities are good for this particular cohort, because every activity has a rating and all these different categories. So yeah, really, like the kind of the adjustable part of this means that it can go into these different sectors But it does require, once again, just that kind of initial, what's the goal here? How much do we know about this person, facility, etc.?
Nice. Coming back to Desh, you as an individual, what is one message you would like to give to young Desh?
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty happy with how things have turned out. I wouldn't have minded scaling faster. I guess if I had the same knowledge as I had now, I probably would have tackled it slightly differently. But I wouldn't have, if I hadn't taken the time that I had taken, I wouldn't understand the users anywhere near as much. And the biggest problem in this sector is that technologies try to come in and take over the traditional technologies, being physiotherapy, occupational therapy. Yeah, I would maybe say try one really easy company first, make a bunch of money, and then take your time on the second one.
Look, because of the way things have come, venture capitalist, startup making amazing and crazy money in a short span of time. You are one of those few individuals who has combined technology with social impact. When I talk to a lot of youngsters, they talk about, I'll start a technology company, earn some good money, and then make an exit. But for the youngsters who want to use technology for social impact, what would you suggest them? What should they focus on, and what should be their goal?
Yeah, and I applaud anyone that wants to go down that route. I think the most important factor is align yourself with the people that can help you succeed from day one. Like, I think that's probably one of my biggest pitfalls was I didn't know who was going to be delivering it as much as we do now. And I thought people could use it at home, but I didn't understand the regulatory problems and things. And it's different in every country, and it also is. So now, because we're focusing on aged care, they take a lot of that responsibility because they know how to do the rollout. So if you're doing, it could be circular economy or any of those things, know the organization that will benefit the most from your product and go down the path of being the champion for them and them being the champion for you. I think that's the most important one.
Right. And to my final question is, you have been in a long journey. Youngsters today they have a lot more options. They are experimentative. A lot of them want to start their own company. So for those people who want to start their own company, what is your advice when they're following their passion?
I think some of the best companies I've seen come out of people knowing what their skill set is and finding the gaps, and then making a company with people that are just as willing to experiment as you are. And so that means that you've got a core foundation of people that you need to make the company succeed without having major paychecks that require. And so, really, I think it's important to know your strengths and weaknesses and make sure you've got a full team. Like, the fact that I've learned all these different skills is good, but at the same time, it also takes my attention away from a lot of the things I could be doing within the company. So, yeah, I would say if you can start off with the core team for success without needing to hire, that gives you such a good foundation from anything from there on. Sorry, I think I stepped on my light. My light went off. Apologies for that.
All good. So
There you go. Put it back on.
what we have heard today is more than just a story about technology. It's a story about hope. Daish Malani is showing us that innovation isn't just about faster apps or better devices. It's about touching lives, healing people, and adding life where it matters most. Daish, thank you for your vision, your work, and congratulations to what you are doing. And to our listeners, remember, the future isn't something we wait for. It is something we build. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep racking the brain. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you.